Welcome back to Community Matters. I'm Bill LeMay. We're continuing our discussion on what happens to your digital life after you die with Andrew Blair with Manning Fulton Attorneys. And Andrew, before we get into what an individual should do, I still am trying to get down to what is digital, what isn't digital, what applies to individuals, what applies to corporations, because I know they're different. So let's start with what is digital property?
Digital asset is an electronic record stored in some sort of online or digital media. So it could be a photo, it could be information contained within an account, but it doesn't include the asset itself. So let's take a stock account, for instance. You have an account with Merrill Lynch or Bank of America or some other securities trader. You have a digital asset with them in that online account that contains information about your holdings. Now the stock itself, even though you don't have a paper certificate, and the stock really is, we think it's in digital form, it's not a digital asset itself. So with regard to something like that, your digital asset is only really the information contained in the online account itself. In Dropbox, it's the actual photos. In Facebook, it could be the content that you post.
Those are viewed as real asset versus digital asset? Your photos like in a Dropbox?
Well, the digital photos are not, because they're stored digitally.
All right.
Now, photos in a drawer at home, would obviously not be, that would be tangible.
All right, so see the confusion I have on my face right now? So you buy stock online, you have an account online, you're making trades online. You never physically have a piece of paper in your hand.
Correct.
But that is viewed differently when you go to probate, right? They'll treat that as part of the estate.
Because it really represents a piece of ownership in a company or a mutual fund. And that's what the difference is there. And the act that we talked about before talks about maybe the digital information regarding that asset is a digital asset, but the underlying asset itself is not.
What about for people who give testimonials, for instance? I'm just thinking an actor gives testimonials, he's using it online or whatever, and then he dies. Does he have a right to that testimonial, or is that, again, digital?
Those are not digital assets per se. Those are image rights. And so contractual arrangements, if they sign endorsement contracts, they're considered personality rights, personal property of that particular celebrity. Now, someone who has the right to use that testimonial may put it in a digital format, and it may, in its digital format, it may be considered a digital asset, but the image right itself falls outside of that definition.
What is the difference between an individual and a corporation? Does the law look at those entities differently?
Well, the UFATA Act just deals with fiduciaries, trustees, executors, guardians, and companies own those assets in their company name. So you have a lot more continuity, and you wouldn't have an executor dealing with a corporate Twitter account unless it was a closely held business and the owner died. But in that case, you're actually dealing with the corporation itself. The digital account and the social media account is passed along with that. So if you're a marketing director and you open up the company's Twitter account, it's not your individual account as a marketing director, it belongs to the company.
I understand why there's not legislation left done yet.
It's
really
taken
do.
a while to get passed.
There's a lot of nuance into this. Now, so okay, I'm an individual and I'm worried. Actually, I hadn't thought about it till now, to be honest with you folks, but now I'm a little worried, because if I do pass away, and I will someday, I guess a person has to first find out where are my digital assets and take inventory. Is that where you begin?
I think a lot of IT professionals will tell you not to do this, but we all keep a spreadsheet or a list of passwords because we can't remember them all. I think last time I looked at the sheet I had close to 100 accounts.
Really?
Now, a lot of them were insignificant.
Sure.
Like I said, you go to Overstock or some other site and you buy one item 10 years ago, you don't think that you have an account with a password there that's a digital asset, and quite frankly, you probably don't care about it either at that point. But that is one thing to take stock. And I find in working with clients doing their estate planning, a lot of them don't want to pass that stuff down.
Really?
Because they don't want their children looking in their email. They don't have anything that they particularly feel is of monetary or sentimental value, at least with regard to communications. We see it more with things like Dropbox accounts. My parents have a lot of pictures of my kids that I don't have, and so I'd love to get copies of those if I can. And the companies are finally coming around to dealing with that and allowing more access.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. There may be things that, if I were the survivor, I would like to see those emails. Because you will. Well, I think the curiosity, but then you run into the problem that that email is not only to, let's say, your father, but someone else. And
well,
they have privacy.
Right. We've all probably gotten in arguments with brothers and sisters,
Sure.
or mothers and fathers, and perhaps shot an email out to a friend or something, saying something you didn't want to be remembered.
No.
And so there's a concern there for that.
So, but when it comes to like Facebook or some of these drop boxes, and there's so many out there now.
Right.
Those are things that maybe a father, for instance, would like to leave behind for folks to,
Right.
who want to access those memories.
And
How do they do that then?
The companies are making that easier. When you receive your document of authority, if you're an individual, in North Carolina we call it letters testamentary or letters of administration, you can send that to Dropbox with a death certificate. And what they will typically do is make a copy of all the information in that person's account, and they will send you a copy and then close the account down. Twitter, for instance, has Gmail has an inactive account module set up where while you're alive, you can go into this module and set the terms and say, okay, I want person A, B, and C, if I pass away, to be able to contact you to close my account. Now, ultimately, even if you have this authority, the act does not allow that person to go outside of what the terms of service agreement is. So if the terms of service agreement still says we're not going to give you any access, you've agreed to that while you're alive, and so this act will not change that after death. But what the companies will allow you to do is get in touch with them and say, my father's passed away, please shut down his account. And Facebook, for example, they have a memorial option where Facebook will allow the account to be active, so if people want to go look for old photos and just kind of reminisce about that person, they can't post new content,
But it's still there.
but it's frozen and other people can access it.
Well, that's interesting. Andrew, thank you very much. Don't go away. We'll be right back.